last year. And we're getting back a little bit to normal. The other night, there was one person in the crowd live. Tonight, is anyone there? Is anyone there tonight? We're all on Zoom tonight. So welcome back. One day, as I continue to hope and pray for, one day we'll be back there. I'm vaccinated, by the way. You don't have to worry. You can come. I'm sure you're vaccinated too. In the meantime, we're starting a new sefer tonight. It's Sefer Bamidbar. It details the Jewish people's travels through the wilderness, which begins the 40 years of sojourns, as we're going to find out later in the parsha that deals with the Meraglim, Parshas Shlach, that comes later on in this book. But we begin tonight in Midbar Sinai, in the wilderness of Sinai. And we'll have in mind that all of the rockets and the missiles that are falling in Eretz Yisrael, our little Torah learning that we do over here in California, it should be a schus, it should be a merit to protect our brothers and our sisters and all the soldiers that are out there on the front lines, and the police who are running in and breaking up lynch mobs and riots and the like in the streets of Eretz Yisrael. And we hope that just as Klal Yisrael finds itself in the days preparing itself right before Shavuos, which is reminiscent of when Klal Yisrael was together in the Midbar, in the wilderness itself, we hope that all the Jewish people once again be together as one, and we will not be in the Midbar, not be in the wilderness, but we'll be back together in Yerushalayim Kodesh, and it should be Bimheira V'Yameinu, speedily in our days, and Hashem should watch over our nation, watch over our land, watch over our soldiers, watch over our loved ones, and everybody should be healthy and safe. Amen. The Torah starts in the beginning of this week's parsha by telling us the following: Yidaber Hashem al Moshe b'Midbar Sinai. And Moshe tells over to Moshe Rabbeinu in Midbar Sinai, in the wilderness at Sinai. And from here, as we will see tonight, this is a symbol. It is reminding us that when the Torah was given over to Klal Yisrael, which is one of the reasons we read this parsha right before Shavuos, because it's coming to remind us and to allow us to realize that the Torah itself was given over not in a fancy place. It wasn't given over in Eretz Yisrael. It wasn't given over in lush, beautiful rolling hills and with big trees and flowers and birds chirping around. The Torah was given over in the Midbar Sinai. It was given over in the wilderness of Sinai. And the question is exactly as we are describing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is about to give the most magnificent thing in the entire world to the Jewish people. Chazal tell us that from the very beginning of time, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a Tanai, he made a condition and a deal with Maaseh Bereishis, with the creation. He said, I'm going to create you. I'm going to let you run. I'm going to let you live and exist in symmetry with all the laws of nature as they are. But it's only going to last as long as it takes for the Jewish people to stand by Mount Sinai and receive the Torah. If they will receive the Torah at Har Sinai, and they'll accept it upon themselves with love and with trepidation and with understanding of what they're getting themselves, what they're taking upon themselves, so then the whole world will continue to exist, because that is why I created the world. But if the Jewish people will make a grave error by Har Sinai, and when I offer them the Torah, they will refuse it, so then the world is going to go back to Tohu Vavo, it's going to go back to unformed voidness. The world is no longer going to be as you know it. So Hashem has been waiting for nearly 2,000 years for this moment in time that the Jewish people are going to stand by Har Sinai and receive the Torah. When a class makes a graduation, you have a child who's been in that school, let's say it's high school. They've been in the high school for 4 years. So the graduation is like the pinnacle of all of their hard work, all the classes they went through, the tests they took, the hours of studying, the friends they made, the friends they don't have anymore, the teachers they like, the teachers they don't like. Whatever, the graduation is a monumental event. So you try to pick a very bekovedik, a very honorable place. You try to make it, if it's going to be in your school auditorium, if it's going to be on the field over there, you dress it up a little bit. You make it look nice. Everybody comes in the nicest of clothing. You make it something that is royal and regal and honorable for this situation. The President of the United States is inaugurated. Although, yes, he doesn't have to go far. It's right out there in front of the White House. Nevertheless, there is pomp and circumstance, and there are fireworks, and there are royal people that are there. There is tremendous dressing up of the entire front lawn to make sure that it is honorable and it is respectful, and it is something on a very high level of class and respect that is going to be given to the president. Person goes on vacation even. So now with the world of the Airbnbs, you can't just rent like that kind of an Airbnb. It's got to be nice, has to be a little bit fancy, enough rooms, some bells and some whistles, a little extra this, a little extra that. Got to try to make everybody happy. We try to do things in a way that it's going to be magnificent. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving over the most amazing thing in the world, and it's called Torah. He has been waiting since the beginning of the creation of this world to share this with the Jewish people. And we have to make the right decision and the right choice. And we would expect that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu offers us this gift, this treasure, this magnificent mind piece of the Ribbono Shel Olam, we would certainly expect that when he's going to give it to us, it will be in the most honorable, magnificent, grandiose setting that you could possibly imagine. And yet, as we look in this week's Parsha, and we know going back to Parshas Yisro, where the Torah was given, we understand that the Torah was not given on a huge mountain with lots of grass and flowers and animals and the sun perfect and the temperature perfect, everything just right. It wasn't given in the palatial areas of somewhere in the world where there's the blue sky in the background, the water coming down, a little waterfall, and everything is beautiful beyond belief. There wasn't a wedding planner or a event planner that was dressing everything up in the right way. The Torah was given in the barest, most barren of all places in the universe. It was given in the Sinai desert. There's nothing but sand and rocks. If you've ever seen pictures of the Sinai desert, which they know pretty much more or less where it is today, you will see nothing more than mountains, rocky terrain, and dried out sand on the ground. I'm not saying that 3,500 years ago it looked exactly the same, but we have to assume some in the wilderness, it doesn't look much prettier than that. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do that for the Torah? Doesn't he have more respect for the Torah? Doesn't he want more glory and honor for the Torah? Doesn't he want the Jewish people to feel proud of the gift that they are receiving while they are standing there hearing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's voice? Why did he give it to us in such a really lowly type of a place with no theme, with no real character, as they say? The colors are kind of blah. There's nothing real. There's no real warmth. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do that? We would have expected him to find the most, take us to the Swiss Alps. Take us to the Amazon rainforest. Take us to the Appalachian Mountains. Take us to Hawaii even. Take us someplace where we can enjoy the sand and the sea and the palm trees and the sun beating down. Why? In the barren, desolate wilderness. That's not really my question, because the Midrash in the beginning of this week's Parsha addresses this as well. And the Midrash says, Lama Bamidbar Sinai. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu give the Torah in Midbar Sinai, in the wilderness of Sinai? Hashem, you could not have found a nicer place to give the Torah. It's like, imagine you're planning for a chasana, for a wedding, and you're going around, you're looking at all these places, and some places are beautiful. And let's say you can afford the beautiful place. And there's other places, not really so beautiful, Not so nice, not so elegant, not so classy. Who's going to go to the not so nice, not so classy place? Hashem, you couldn't have found it. And this is like a chasana. Right? When Hashem lifted the mountain up over our heads, it's like the chuppah at the wedding, and Klal Yisrael goes underneath, and we embrace the Rebbeinu Shalom and His Torah, and we are getting wed to Hashem at Shavuos time. Couldn't find a nicer wedding hall, Hashem? Maybe a better caterer? You could have a better musician, a better band. Why like this? Ask the Midrash. Mikan shanu chachamim. From here the sages learn, b'shloisha dvar nitna Torah. The Torah was given with three separate entities, three separate things. Ba'esh, it was given with fire. Ubamayim, it was given with water. Bamidbar, and it was given in the wilderness, that desolate desert wilderness called Sinai. Then the Gemara the Midrash goes on and brings proofs how we know that it was with fire, with water, and with the Midbar and the wilderness. And the Gemara asks, V'lama nidna b'shloisha dvar malov. Why was it so necessary that in the story of Har Sinai, when the Jewish people are receiving the Torah, that there's going to be fire on the mountain, there's going to be water coming down from the heavens, and they're going to be standing in the Midbar in the wilderness? Why is that the backdrop of Har Sinai? Again, as we said, we could have thought about a lot of other backdrops and a lot of other scenery for us to see. So what is so special about these three things? Just like these three things, fire, water, and the vast desert, is free for anyone who comes to the world. You don't have to pay for the Mojave Desert. You don't have to pay for a stream of water that is running through somewhere that you find. Even fire itself is rather easy. It multiplies and it grows, and it doesn't cost all that much to strike a match. Says the Gemara, Kach divrei Torah chinam heim, so too the words of Torah are free. It doesn't cost that much. What does Zoom cost? $15 a month. Divide that up by 30 days. What are you paying? 50 cents a day to have Zoom, where you can be streaming Torah all day long. There's a famous website called TorahAnytime.com. They have millions of hours of Torah that is being broadcast on there. Any day of the week, you can tap into any shir that you would like. It doesn't cost a penny. Says the Gemara, says the Midrash, just like those three elements of this world are rather free, doesn't cost much money or maybe any money at all, they're elements of this world, so too, Kach divrei Torah, the words of Torah, chinam heim, they are free, they don't cost a dime, which means that it takes away one of our greatest excuses for learning. One of the greatest excuses that we have for, in general, for everything in life, too expensive. I don't have that kind of money. I can't afford such a thing. Says the Midrash, you could afford Torah, don't worry. Because guess what? It's free. It's free. How much does the rabbi charge per shir? How much is the salary? How much is the guy who's sitting and learning in kollel making? How much is even when the world-class speaker comes in and he mesmerizes 2,000 people in one room? How much money is he getting? It's not that much. And how much are the people paying to get into that room? They're not paying that much, because the Torah has a quality to it, and that is that it is free. And since that it is free, you don't have to pay that much for it. If you'd like to pay and make a nice donation, don't worry, we won't say no. But a person doesn't have to do that, because you just open up a book, you take a sefer off of the shelf, you go to a shir, you go to a class, you involve yourself in a lecture or some kind of a series of teachings, and it's all yours for the taking. I heard once a beautiful pshat on this, I believe it's on this midrash, and that is, you see that those things that are the things in this world that are most necessary for a person, those are the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made free of charge. Oxygen, it's a little bit different than this midrash, but oxygen is something that a person cannot live without. As we learned this previous year with the coronavirus. As a matter of fact, I saw a very interesting article that in India, just the last couple of days, they've been plagued and they've been broken by the coronavirus in the last month or two. And so many people have been dying in the streets. Literally, the hospitals are falling apart. People, it is wild what is going on over there. So they had a public idol destruction day because they made all of these idols and they bowed down to these idols and prayed to them because they said, you're the coronavirus idol, you're going to save us from all of our tragedies. And they see that as the more they pray, the more it's continuing to spin out of control. So the people decided, you know what? These idols don't do anything. So they took these bulldozers and they plowed over the idols and they tossed them all, they burned them all up, and they said, these idols, they do nothing for us. This is out of control what's going on right now. Says the Midrash over here, those things which are necessary in one's life, they are found anywhere you look. You don't have to make an idol. You don't have to go and create something. You need to breathe, correct? Hashem made us that we have nostrils and we have lungs and we need oxygen. So where do you get oxygen? You don't need a tank. But again, if a person is very sick and they cannot breathe, they need a tank of air. However, a person who has healthy nose and healthy lungs and lives in relatively clean air, the oxygen is everywhere. You just take a deep breath and you have oxygen. A person needs to eat and to drink. The basics are 80% of your body is made up of water weight. So that means that water is something that is essential to our existence. Water, you can find it any place. You can find it in a stream. You can find it in a well. You can find it in the ocean. You can find it from the faucet over there. Even the homeless people underneath the freeway system over there, even they have free water for them. Water is every place. So why did Hashem make it like that? Because the things that we need the most in our lives, they're everywhere that you could possibly find it. Torah is free. Torah is everywhere. Torah can be learned inside of a Beis Midrash. Torah can be learned while you're sitting in your house watching Zoom. Torah can be learned on an airplane 35,000 feet up in the air. And Torah can be learned when a person is sitting at a wedding waiting for the chuppah to begin. The Torah is literally everywhere in the world, and if a person would be in tune even more with themselves and the world around them, they would feel the Torah everywhere that they are. So the things that we require the most in our lives, they're everywhere, and as the Midrash is saying over here, they're free of charge. Come and partake of it. It's all yours. You have nothing at all that is holding you back. Says the Midrash, you know why the Torah was given in a midbar, in a wilderness? Yeah, of course HaKadosh Baruch could have found a beautiful place. He could have found a trail, a mountain trail, which was with lush trees and everything so beautiful, snow-capped mountains that could take your breath away. He could have found all of that. It's not out of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ability, but he wanted to teach us a lesson. And that lesson is, as the midbar is all for the taking, nobody even owns a wilderness. It is ownerless, as we shall see. And it is free. So too, Torah is free for you to come and take. Nobody's holding you back from it. But you got to come and take it. Just like if you want to go into the wilderness and you want to be able to appreciate what there is, you got to go. If you want the Torah, you have to go and you have to take it for yourself. That's one of the explanations that the Midrash gives. However, the Midrash gives another explanation, and it says over the following. It says Davar Acher, another idea. Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe b'midbar Sinai. It says in the beginning of our pasuk this week in the parsha, Hashem spoke to Moshe in Midbar Sinai. Anyone who does not make themselves into a ownerless wilderness, they will not be able to acquire the wisdom of the Torah. L'kach nemar, that's why it says, Bamidbar Sinai, in the wilderness of Sinai. Just like the wilderness of Sinai. It was ownerless, which means it has nobody that is the balabas. Nobody is the owner of that place. So too, it's a sign, it's a symbol to us to teach us that if you will make yourself as ownerless as this wilderness over here, then you will merit to be able to receive the Torah also, just as the Jewish people received the Torah at Har Sinai. But if a person is not ownerless, and ownerless over here means the world does not control me. The trappings and the callings and the lurings of this world, they do not control me and take me where they want to take me. Rather, they don't own me. I am ownerless for them, which means that I am in control of myself. They are not in control of me. So then a person has the ability to come and receive the Torah in their life. However, the Mefarshim explain over here that if a person is owned by the world, which means they have all of their trappings, the things that pull them in this direction and that direction, and this is important and that is important. I need this, I need that, otherwise I cannot be happy. That one of the greatest sages of our generation, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, lives in a city called Bnei Brak. Anyone that's ever been in Bnei Brak knows that it is like in the summertime, the humidity is so thick and so dense that you could actually cut the air with a knife if you'd be able to do such a thing. That's how hot and humid and uncomfortable it is for a person. For years and years and years and years, Rav Chaim Kanievsky did not have air conditioning in his apartment in any of the rooms at all, because he felt that it was too much indulgence in this world. It wasn't a necessity. He felt that he was just fine. He was able to learn without disruption. His wife and his kids, they managed all right. There wasn't a problem. And therefore, they didn't have an air conditioning. As the years went on and Reb Chaim got a little bit older, so his wife noticed that, sitting in a hot room and learning was maybe becoming a little bit more difficult, and she convinced him. And it took her a long time to do such a thing. At least let's put an air conditioning in the study where you learn most of the 18 hours of the day that you are learning. And so he did put an air conditioning in there to be able to learn better and longer and stronger. Says the Midrash over here, that when you make yourself into this midbar, when you make yourself into this wilderness, which is ownerless, and ownerless means that the world at large has no hands on me. It cannot pull me and grab me in. Rather, I am free to be able to go and commune together with Hashem and with His Torah. I don't have things that are weighing down on me, distracting me, pulling me away from my focus of my studies. Then you'll be zeicha, then you will merit to have the Torah. Once that we're on the topic of air conditioning, so it reminds me that Rabbi Fassman, who was the Rosh Kollel, Rabbi Chaim Fassman, who was the Rosh Kollel of the Los Angeles Kollel here in Los Angeles for, I think, 35, 40 years, he passed away. I want to say it's already, must be about 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, and he passed away on Shavuos. And after Shavuos was over, we all got the messages of the calls that he passed away on Shavuos, and the Levaya, the funeral, was going to take place right after Yom Tiv. And so I drove with my children, we drove to the city, and we went to the Levaya. And I remember saying on my way there, I knew Baruch Hashem, I knew Rabbi Fassman probably like 20 years. And I said, I would not be surprised if he never changed his mode of dress even once for the 20 years that he lived in Los Angeles. I never recalled seeing him get a new fancy pair of glasses. I never saw an outstanding tie. I never saw a suit that was super 180s with nice twill and the like. I never saw that. He dressed simple. His glasses were simple. His hat was simple. He never had a new car. He always had cars that people donated into the kollel, which someone who donates their car in Los Angeles to the kollel, it means that the car is like 4.5 years old. It has 21,000 miles on it, and it's too old for them already. So they donate to the Rosh Kollel, and he drove that car. That's how he lived. And sure enough, at the Levaya, at the funeral, one of the Hespedim, one of the eulogies mentioned that in all of the years that he knew Rabbi Fassman never once got into the trappings over here of Los Angeles like most of us do. He never changed his mode of dress. He didn't change his glasses, his hat, his shoes. Everything was when he came 40 years ago to LA, that's how it was. He was ownerless, like this wilderness over here. And the hands of Los Angeles, California could not wrap themselves around him. So there was an amazing story that was told over about Rabbi Fassman. And Rabbi Graydon, who's one of the other outstanding Rabbanim of our community, he said over the following. There was a man in the community years and years ago, let's say that his name was Mr. Greenbaum, and he was an older gentleman, and he didn't have a family, and he would very, very often eat by the kollel families, the Rabbanim and the like. And one Shabbos afternoon, it was a sweltering day in Los Angeles, Rabbi Graydon came to visit Rabbi Fassman. And he walks into their house, and as he walks in, Rabbi Graydon realizes that it is boiling kastroiling inside that house. There's not an ounce of air that is flowing out of the vents. And it was a hot day in Los Angeles, who knows, 90, 100 degrees, and the house was burning. So Rabbi Graydon pulled Fassman aside. And he pulls Rabbi Fassman aside. Somebody's just off of mute over here. He pulls Rabbi Fassman aside and he says, Rabbi Fassman, is your air conditioning broken? It's boiling in here. So Rabbi Fassman said, no, not at all. Air conditioning is working just fine. He said, so then why don't you have your air conditioning on? He said, you see Mr. Greenbaum over here? He comes to us very often for Shabbos. He has a very, very delicate constitution. And the air conditioning really, really bothers him. So the weeks that I know that he's going to come for Shabbos for one of the meals, I don't turn on the air conditioning, because I don't want to upset him and to bother him that he should be uncomfortable in our house. That means that Rabbi Fassman, for himself, for his entire family in that house on those sweltering summer days when Mr. Greenbaum was there, he made it his business to make sure that another Jew was not uncomfortable. But that meant that he himself, and I guess this is the message and the lesson that he gave over to his family as well, is that it's not about the air conditioning. It's not about the comfort. It's not about all of those things, because we are ownerless. Just like the Midbar, just like the wilderness is, we don't need that. We just need Torah. And the way that a person is misyaches, they connect with the Torah, is when they disconnect from the things of this world, then you could reconnect and connect with the ruchnius, with the spirituality in the world of the Torah. Now, this reminds me as well of the story that happened to me many, many years ago. I think maybe 20, 21 years ago. One of the great Rabbanim of our generation, Rav Scheinberg, came to Baltimore when I was living in Baltimore, and he stayed there for about a week. Rav Scheinberg at that time was probably in his 80s. I would imagine he must have been about 85 years old. He wore about 100 pairs of tzitzis, anyone that ever saw him before. During the week, he had his tefillin on all day, all the tzitzis, plus a talis over him. So 100 pairs of tzitzis, plus a talis on top, and his tefillin. And that's the way that he dressed. So you can imagine the heat that is going on inside of Rabbi Scheinberg. 100 pairs of tzitzis, wool, most of them wool, all on top. Today we have it if a kid says, it's so uncomfortable, he can't wear it at all. These are 100 pairs. On Shabbos, they opened up the house to the community to come for Shalashudis, the third meal, to be with Rabbi Scheinberg. So I get to the house Shabbos afternoon. By the time that I got there, it was packed. There were like 100 plus. There were 100 plus people already in the house. It was not a very large house. People were out the door, and we're shoving our way to get into the dining room. And for some reason, unbeknownst to me, it was summer in Baltimore. There's humidity. There's heat. It's very uncomfortable. Everybody lives with air conditioning. For some reason, the air conditioning was not on in this house. And the people that were there are literally sweating buckets and buckets and buckets. There's men that are taking off their coats. They're taking off their hats. They're trying to get a glass of hot soda that's sitting on the table. They are melting over there. So I was very uncomfortable myself. And I wanted to see what's going on with Rav Scheinberg. I mean, he's the one who's wearing 100 pairs of tzitzis. Plus, he has a large wool tallis draped over him as well. Plus, he wears a long coat to boot. He must be really suffering. And I look up in the front of the room, and there is a fan that is there near him. The problem was it was facing the opposite direction of Scheinberg, so he was getting no benefit from the fan either. And I watched carefully, and I saw that Rav Scheinberg did not have one single bead of sweat on his forehead. He had not one. He was talking, he was giving a drasha, he was sitting there in that hot room. There was not one bead of sweat anywhere on his face, on his forehead, nothing at all. I was standing next to a friend of mine, and the two of us are looking at each other, and we're looking at Rav Scheinberg, and we both realized the same thing. We walked out of the house, and then he said to me, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" I said, "I couldn't see because you were sweating so much, it was blocking my vision." "Did you see that there was not one bead of sweat?" I said, "I saw, not one." Because when you make yourself ownerless, then the heat of this world, it doesn't bother you. The chair is a little bit uncomfortable. It doesn't bother you. The shear goes on a little bit longer than you want. It's okay. It doesn't bother you. There's noise outside. It doesn't bother you. It doesn't make a difference. Why? Because the world doesn't own me. The trappings of the world don't own me. The elements, the objects, the desires, the treats, the luxuries, they don't own me. I'm ownerless. And that allows me to immerse myself into the world of the Torah. And this, says the Gemara, says the Midrash so far, this is the reason that it starts off Bamidbar Sinai, in the wilderness of Sinai. And this is one of the reasons why we learn Parshas Bamidbar every year before Shavuos. It works out almost every single year that the Shabbos before Shavuos is Parshas Bamidbar. Because if we're going to sit on Shavuos night and we are going to accept the Torah anew on ourselves, and we are going to try to dedicate ourselves to another year of Torah, to another year where we are learning, to another year where we are making efforts, to another year we want to imbibe more of the teachings and the chachma, the wisdom, so then we have to get this message clear before we go into Shavuos. The message is that we are hefker, we are ownerless like the midbar itself. And this really, the Gemara alludes to this as well. There are two Gemaras that deal with these verses, and one of the Gemaras, and the Gemara says in the Dorim the following. It says later on in Sefer Bamidbar it would say umi midbar matana, and from the midbar, from the wilderness, Hashem gave us a matana. He gave us a gift. What is the gift that He gave us in the wilderness? Of course, that's the Torah. Says the Gemara, Amalei. Since that a person makes himself like a midbar, like a wilderness, shumufkar likoil, he is hefker, he is ownerless to the midbar is ownerless to everything. So Torah nidna loy b'matana, then the Torah is going to be given them with a matana as a gift. So the Gemara is saying even more. Our Midrash is teaching us the reason the Torah was given in the Midbar in the wilderness is that we should understand, just like the wilderness is ownerless, which means nothing has rights over it. So to myself, when I push away the world at large and I say, you do not own me, my phone does not own me. It's the beauty of a Jew that once a week, at least once a week, for 24 hours on Shabbos, we take our phones, we turn them off, and we do not turn them back on until 3.5 seconds after the sun goes down on Saturday night. That was a joke. We don't take we are able to close it. We're able to turn off the world. We're able to show to ourselves that the world itself is ownerless. It doesn't own me. I am not owned by my phone. I'm not owned by my boss. I'm not owned by my car. I'm not owned by the radio. I'm not owned by the news. What's going to happen the whole Shabbos? We're not going to see the news to see what's going on. Whatever's going to happen in the world is going to happen in the world. And after Shabbos, when you will turn on the news, you'll see once again. But Shabbos is a day which teaches us the world is in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the world, the physical world that we are a part of, is trying to grab us every single moment. 24, 25 hours, depending how long you keep the Shabbos upon yourself, you have no reins over me. You have no rights over me. I'm ownerless. I withdraw myself from you, and I'm able to put my energies and my focus into HaKadosh Baruch Hu, into my emunah, into my faith, into my trust, into my learning, into my connection to the Shekhinah, to the divine presence, my connection to mitzvahs and to Yiddishkeit. So Shabbos itself also is a day that teaches us this great lesson. And therefore, says the Gemara, if a person will make themselves like a midbar, they will make themselves ownerless, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to reward you. You know what the reward is going to be? He's going to give you the Torah as a matana, as a gift. Do you think that it is possible that a human being of flesh and blood, of finite koiches, abilities and strengths, a person who is, even if we try as much as we can to make ourselves ownerless, everybody knows the world does own us to a certain extent. There are things that we do and places that we will go and foods that we will eat and things we'll do on our telephone and the computer and the like, because it has its pull on us. Is it possible that a person in flesh and blood who is so surrounded by the physical elements of the world, is it possible that we're going to be able to connect with the Torah, which is the Seichel Elokis? It's the mind of God. It was created 2,000 years before the world was created, which means that it is L'mayla min hatev, it's above all of the laws of physical nature. It's the most spiritual thing. Moshe Rabbeinu had to go and grab it down from the heavens, from the malachim, from the angels, that we should be able to have it. Is it possible that our human minds and our bodies and our souls that we are living with here are going to be able to grasp the profundities and the depth and the beauty of the Torah? Says the Gemara, no, it's actually not possible. And if you were left on your own, you would not be able to acquire it. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives it as a matana. He gives it as a gift. Because a person that works to remove the ownership rights of this world from themselves and shows that I truly want to be in control of myself so that I can then bond together with Hashem and His Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in His kindness, in His mercy, in His wisdom, is going to give us the greatest gift of all. He's going to reward us with His Torah. We try and we try and we try. At the end of the day, it's a matana, it's a gift, it's a heavenly gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu bestows upon us. And the last Gemara, which also is going on this verse over here of Mimidbar Matana, he writes, Im Adam Meisem Atzma Kemidbar Zeh. If a person will make himself like this midbar, like this deserted, desolate area, Shakol Dashin Boy, that just like in the wilderness, anybody who wants to can come and walk all over it. They can trample on it. They can run their caravans and their animals and their stagecoaches through it, no problem. And the ground and the earth can say nothing because the ownerless land, anyone can travel there. If a person will make themselves like that, which means that anybody who wants to, Sha'akol Dashim, anybody who wants to can, quote unquote, trample over me, Torah nitna loy b'matana, then the Torah itself will be given to this person as a matana, as a very great gift. And this, the Mefarshim explain on these words, what does it mean? It means that when a person will get to a place of humility, when a person will get to a place where it doesn't matter what everybody thinks about me or what everybody says about me, if everybody honors me or not, it doesn't matter to me. I don't need that. All that I need to know is that I am adored in the eyes of Hashem. And I'm trying my best to be someone that is going to receive his Torah in my humble ways. Moshe Rabbeinu, as we know, Anav mikol adam al pnei ha'adam, he was the humblest of all men in this world. The Torah was given on Har Sinai, as Chazal teach us. Har Sinai was the smallest of all of the mountains in the vast mountain range of the Sinai desert. Why? Because Hashem was teaching us that it's not the tall, lofty places in the world that are worthy of all of the honor, but those that are lowly, those that are humble, those that are quiet, those that are not trying to steal the limelight, those are the ones that I'm going to give over the gift and the treasure of the Torah to. So a person who will make themselves in that way, like the Midbar, ownerless and also humble. Anybody who wants can come and trample. Not that we should let people walk all over us. That's not what the Gemara is saying. But it means that it doesn't matter to me whether people honor me or not honor me, whether they give me the proper respect or not the respect, whether I get attention or I don't get attention. I don't need any of that. Because just like Har Sinai had none of that and the Torah was given on it, and the wilderness is the desolate, barren area where nobody knows from it at all, but everybody comes running through, and that's the way that the Midbar is. When we make ourselves like that, in great humility, so then we will merit as well to be able to receive the Torah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we have several ideas to concentrate on as we are moving closer to the Yom Tov of Shavuos, that if we will be able to understand the message of the Midbar, of the wilderness, it will change our evening on Shavuos night, and the whole 48 hours, the 2 days that we have, is for us to think about what Torah means to us. Number one, the Torah is like a Midbar because it is free, which means it's everywhere. It's yours for the taking. You don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to have a fancy car. You don't have to have a lot of credit cards, and you don't have to have any of that. You just have to have a desire to learn. And if you have a desire to learn, you'll find someone that will be willing to teach you. You'll find a book on the shelf. Like I said, online, you'll find millions and millions of hours of shiurim that you can access anytime that you want to and learn any topic, any subject that interests you. It's all yours. You don't need much. Torah is all for you. Secondly, we learn that a person has to make themselves ownerless, like the Midbar, like the wilderness, which means that the world doesn't have its hands on me. It doesn't control me. It doesn't own me. It doesn't pull me in the directions that it wants to. Rather, I am disconnected from that. To the best of my abilities, we're all connected. But if we can disconnect in certain places and allow ourselves to ruminate and to elevate ourselves in more ruchnius, more spirituality, in that way the Torah is going to be given to us, as the Gemara says, as a matana, as a gift. Since that it's impossible that the human mind can grasp the mind of Hashem, we're not able to be able to plumb into the depths of the wisdom of the Gemara, of the Talmud, of the Zohar, of the Halacha, of all the fine print that's on the side of the page. We just can't. And therefore, what do we need? We need a gift. We need chesed from Hashem. So what does Hashem do? Oh, you want the Torah? You're making yourself like someone who's not owned and pulled in all directions. I'm going to give it to you as a gift because that is what you deserve. And the last thing that we said tonight is humble oneself. If we humble ourselves, then we'll be able to receive the words of Torah. If a person will understand that these are not just words that are written in some bazooka bubblegum comic strip, these are not the front page of the newspaper op-ed of what's going on in the world today. These are the words that go back from before the creation of the world. These are the words, they are the Seicha Elokis, the mind of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These are the words that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blasted out, the first two of the Aseres HaDibros, the Ten Commandments, and Klal Yisrael, although they were on the level of prophets at that time, they could not handle the radiant Kedusha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought to the world, and they died on the spot, only that He brought them back to life, otherwise we wouldn't even be here today. These are the words that Moshe heard directly from Hashem, 40 days, 40 nights on the top of the mountain. And these are the words that have sustained our nation through thick and through thin, through the thousands of years of our history. That's a lot for a person to humble themselves for. And when a person becomes a humble man or a woman, and they're able to say, that's what Torah is all about. Those are where those words are coming from. They go back thousands, more than thousands of years, all the way into the mind of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Himself. Then I will admit I don't know anything. I know a fraction, a sliver, a drop of those words. Let me humble myself before HaKadosh Baruch Hu and be able to receive His Torah. And this is perhaps one of the reasons why we read Megillas Rus on Shavuos. Megillas Rus is the story of a woman named Naomi who was left with her two daughter-in-laws, Rus and Orpah. And she was a broken woman. She lost her husband. She lost her children. She lost Eretz Yisrael. She was in the land of Moab, which she wasn't supposed to be in. And she was a broken woman. She had nothing left at all. And although she had nothing left at all, the pasuk over there in the Megillah says that after she finished sitting Shiva for the second one of her sons, it says that she girded her strength and she said, I'm going back to Eretz Yisrael. And Rus, her daughter-in-law, who was a Moabite princess, she wasn't a Jew. She was a Moabite princess when she saw that her mother-in-law, who was so broken and gone through so much and had lost basically everything, fame, fortune, husband, children, prestige, her land, her home, she lost it all. And yet for the sake of living that life of Torah and getting back to the Holy Land, she suddenly found this inner strength to gird herself and go back. Ruth said, is that what it means to be a Jew? Is that what Torah does to a person? Is that a person who is broken, yet she's not even broken because she has her vision set straight. She knows where she's going, what she wants. Says Ruth, I'm willing to abandon the palace. I'll abandon my riches. I'll abandon my prestige. I'll abandon my position as the princess. If I'll marry the right man here in Moab, I'll become the queen eventually underneath my mother. But I'm willing to give up everything so that I should have the simcha and the meaning in my life that my mother-in-law Naomi has after all that she has been through. And Ruth turns her back on the world. She turns her back on the luxuries, on the riches, on the prestige, on everything that was in that palace. She turned away. And she said, I'll make myself ownerless, like a midbar, like a desert. I'll remove from myself everything you could tread upon me. I will humble myself. Here she is learning from her mother-in-law. A woman that has nothing to her name anymore, but yet she's learning the secret of life, that Torah is Torah's Chaim. It gives a person chiyus, it gives them life. It gives them direction. It gives them goals. It gives them understanding and clarity. She said, that's what it's all about. And she said, wherever you go, I will go. Whoever your people are, I want them to be my people. Wherever you will lay down, I will lay down. Whatever you are going to eat, I'm going to eat. Wherever you can walk on Shabbos, I will walk on Shabbos. Whatever the Torah says, I want the Torah to be my owner. I don't want the world to own me. So as we are getting ever so close to this great festive holiday of Shavuos, we should not get lost in the worldly endeavors of this holiday. The cheesecake and the sushi and the roast and the finest of wines and the schnapps and all the other treats that we put on the table and we keep around the clock here at night to make sure that everybody can learn. Those are good. That's fuel to give our body the energy that it needs. But the main thing which is so important and which is so precious to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is he wants to see, are we like a midbar? Are we like this wilderness that has learned the messages of being free for Torah, of being a place that is ownerless and wants to be owned by the Torah? And are we people that have humbled ourselves, made ourselves into that nation, into that person who says, I understand the greatness and the glory and the loftiness and the ingeniousness of Torah, which comes from the Seichel Elokis, from the mind of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then we can be makabel, then we could accept that Torah properly. So as the world continues to clash, and there are so many difficult things that are going on for Klal Yisrael, if we can just gird ourselves with the spiritual fortitude and the emunah that is necessary, and we will push ourselves a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more to be able to bring more upon ourselves. I don't know if anybody's been keeping up with all the stories of the 45 Kedoshim, these holy Jews who passed away in Meron just now almost 2 weeks ago. And every single one was like holier than the one before him. They were people that had dedicated their lives and years of their life to learning, to teaching, to spreading the beautiful ways of the Torah, which means that they were like the midbar. They were the undeniable midbar, the deserts, the wastelands that allowed the Torah to come inside of them and fill themselves up with such greatness. So maybe as a zechus, as a merit for all of their neshamas, we will try our best to elevate our neshamas as well during this time. And the greatest way that a person can elevate their neshama is by elevating their neshama through Torah. One of the people who passed away, they said that when he was standing there in there was like a final, whatever, there was so much going on in Meron, and they were singing and dancing and everything, and there's downtime as well. You can't just dance and sing the whole time. Somebody that was standing next to him for most of the evening said that whenever he didn't have to sing, and whenever he didn't have to dance, and whenever there was like a lull in that which was going on, they saw his lips were moving. And he was reciting Mishnayos, which are our texts of the oral Torah. He was reciting Mishnayos, what we call Baal Peh, by heart. He didn't want to waste a second. He wanted to continue his connection, even in that glorious. Imagine being, I don't know if you've ever been in a large crowd. There's 100,000 people singing, dancing, there's music, there's sights, there's attractions, there's people screaming, there's all the different things going on. How do you stay focused in such a place? But he was able to do it because he was ownerless like a wilderness. And he was someone whose heart and his soul and his mind were directed and gravitated towards Hashem. Perhaps if we will take it upon ourselves in our own small way to allow the hands of the world to just release a little bit from ourselves, we'll give up something that's holding us back. And in that way, we'll be able to embrace Torah in a way that we never have before. It'll be a zechus for ourselves, It'll be a merit for our families, for our communities, for Klal Yisrael, who is right now in the throes of war and battle in Eretz Yisrael. And it'll be a schus for all of those neshamas, those 45 kedoshim that are no longer in this world, to learn and to practice and to spread their beautiful Torah. And it'll be a nechama. It'll be a great comfort and consolation to the families who are left to deal with the aftermath. No father, no son, no brother, no sibling, no uncles, no grandfather, gone. And these families, what is their only maybe sense of comfort is if they'll know that the rest of Klal Yisrael is taking it upon themselves to have more Torah in their lives. And it was motivated by the loss of these 45 Kedoshim. That will be a tremendous comfort to all the families who know what they have lost. Because we are the ones who have to see what we have to gain right now at this juncture and this point in our lives. I wish everybody a wonderful Shabbos and a wonderful Yom Tov of Shavuos. It should truly be elevating. Yes, you can enjoy the cheesecake as well, for sure. And if your wife slaved away in the kitchen, you better make sure you take 2 pieces and tell her how delicious it is. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that we taste how delicious the Torah is on this Shavuos. Have a wonderful Yom Tov, everyone.